We begin with the breaking news now. President Trump just leaving Capitol Hill after making an in-person appeal to fellow Republicans on the Hill ahead of a crucial tax vote. Possible hurdles looming in the Senate. You're watching this video from moments ago. This is Outnumbered Overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. We're awaiting the House vote now on taxes. Following that personal appeal from the president just moments ago, he told reporters that things are going well and that he expects the Senate to come around on taxes as well. This is House Republicans are confident that they have the votes to pass their bill. But there is little margin for error, as no Democrats are expected to come on board. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel is live for us on the Hill. Mike?
Harris, good afternoon. House Republican leaders predict they have the votes to take a significant step on tax reform. As you mentioned, President Trump was just up here giving House Republicans a pep talk. A source in the room tells Fox that the president said, "I love you, go out and vote." I'm told the meeting was very positive, with the president praising both Speaker Paul Ryan and Chairman Kevin Brady. But some New York Republicans are still worried about the impact of scaling back that state and local tax deduction.
I cannot allow the people of New York and the people of my district to become collateral damage in a federal tax reform bill.
We want tax relief. We want to kickstart our economy. We want to create jobs. We want to see people take home more money because they spend it better than their government spends their money, but not on the backs of our constituents. There's still hope.
Earlier, the House Speaker Paul Ryan responded to that criticism.
We actually added back a $10,000 property tax deduction in addition to the tax cuts that are already in the bill that everybody gets. So we've actually run numbers on these districts and shown that taxpayers in those districts, in those states, still get tax cuts, itemizers and non-itemizers. Most people won't have to itemize.
All eyes are on the House floor, and moments ago, the House Democratic leader tried to turn up the pressure on the GOP.
House Republicans will have to decide whether they will chain themselves to this poisonous middle-class tax hike that is dead on arrival in the Senate. The American people are watching, and the American people will hold the Republicans accountable for their decisions for this tax scam.
On the Senate side, the Finance Committee continues its work on its bill. A significant moment. Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson says he's a no, saying he believes the proposal as written would favor corporations over other businesses. That is significant because the Senate leadership can only lose 2 Republican votes. Otherwise, any bill would fail. Harris?
Mike Emanuel, thank you very much. Now, as we await the House vote on tax cuts, let's bring in one of those Republicans who met with the president just moments ago on the Hill, Congresswoman Diane Black of Tennessee. She chairs the Budget Committee and sits on Ways and Means, the House's chief tax writing committee. Boy, this is a huge day. What did the president just say to you?
Well, this is a once in a generation opportunity to give tax relief to the middle class folks in our country, especially in the state of Tennessee. I'm fighting for them. The president did say, as has already been reported, that we need to just go and vote on this and get this done. The American people are waiting for this to happen once in a generation, and I'm very proud to be a part of this, Harris.
Well, the way you're talking, I think you're a yes. There are some no's. And did the president maybe have a word for the people who are planning to vote no on this in your own party?
We have a few people that are still concerned. As you have already reported, there are some people in some of the higher tax states that are concerned, but we've been working with them and making sure that they're getting the information to take back to their own constituents to show them that this is going to be a really good thing for most of the taxpayers. Yes, there may be some that we're still going to have to work to make sure that we address that, but the middle class, the middle income taxpayer is really going to be the one that benefits by this, and I'm very proud that in Tennessee we're going to see a real effect for those people that the government takes too much of their money. We want to give it back to them so they can spend it the way they want to spend it.
Well, I hear the energy, and I had the chairman of the Ways and Means on yesterday, Kevin Brady. He had that same energetic optimism, but you had 20 people in the House who were Republicans say no to budget reconciliation, which is how we got to this. You were just 2 votes shy of that not passing. Among those people, do you know of any who are still no's? I know you have concerns that you say that you're kind of trafficking there, and you understand that, but a concern and a no are 2 different things, and one can knock this down the road in a different way.
Harris, we have the votes for this, and I'm very comfortable that we're going to be in a comfortable place with the votes. And so this is, again, an exciting time. once in a generation opportunity to give people money back, and that's what I'm fighting for, is to make sure that my constituents get that money back in their pockets so they can spend it the way they see fit to spend it.
All right, so something new that we found out yesterday about the Senate side of all of this was the Obamacare mandate, those people having to pay a fine or a fee, or as it's been decided, since it goes to the IRS, it's a tax, if they don't want to take Obamacare. And that was not in the House bill, but it could be in conference. Talk to me about that.
It could be in conference. And you know, we in the House of Representatives did what we promised the American people we would do. We did a repeal and replace, which did repeal the individual mandate. And this is something that people really are asking us to do, is give them an opportunity to make their own choices on the kind of insurance that they want and what they can afford. And so obviously we don't have it in our bill, but if the Senate puts it in there, we'll go to conference and we'll work this out in conference. But the House has already done its work on that issue.
All right, one last question before I let you go. I know that you will vote this afternoon, and our kind of minute-by-minute watch of this is that it could happen at any time after the president would leave the Hill. What is the schedule right now? Are there still any kind of things that you have to work out, or do you just go vote?
It's going to happen very soon. As a matter of fact, I expect the bell to ring any minute now, and I'll be able to go in there and put my voting card in the box and help those Tennesseans to get a break from those taxes.
All right. Congresswoman Black of Tennessee, the great state of, appreciate your time, and now it's time to go vote. Here shortly, we'll be watching. Thank you. And this breaking news now, we knew that this was coming together last hour on Outnumbered, and now we can report that there has been a mistrial in the Senator Menendez trial in New Jersey. Remember, he was up on 18 counts, including bribery and fraud. This is day 38 of the trial. They've been in deliberations for at least 8 of those days, and the complicating factors have been, first, the jurors didn't understand if they had to be unanimous on all 18 counts, if it was piecemeal, which ones would they need to be unanimous on. And then you had a juror leave in recent days because that person had a long-standing vacation, and then that person talked to the press and said, you know what, I thought Menendez was going to be innocent in all of this, and now you have a deadlock situation that was reported earlier today, and now a mistrial by this judge. This judge wanted to meet with both sides in chambers, and he did, defense and the prosecution. That happened a short time ago. He said that he would not immediately go to a mistrial, but it might look like that, and so that's what we've been waiting to hear. Let's go to David Lee Miller in Newark, New Jersey. So this is officially a mistrial. What happens now?
That's right, Harris. The judge officially declared a mistrial. No one knows what happens next. That is going to be up to the government. The question is whether or not they are going to try and retry this case. I can tell you that Senator Menendez moments ago very pleased with the outcome of this trial. It was not an acquittal, but he was nevertheless very pleased with the fact that this was a hung jury. The jury was deadlocked. The judge, the defense, and the prosecution met with the jurors for about 20 minutes individually to confirm the contents of a note that said the jury is deadlocked on all the counts. When the senator exited the chambers of the judge with his attorney, Abby Lowell, he walked over to his son and daughter. He was smiling, and he embraced them. He was as joyous as he has ever been since this trial began 11 weeks ago. We expect to hear shortly from the senator. He is inside the court right now. He has spoken in the past on occasion, and we anticipate that he will be speaking with reporters today about the past 11 weeks and the fact that this was not an acquittal. There were people on that jury, Harris, who felt that, in fact, at least on some of the counts, or if not all of them, he should have been found guilty. Conversely, there were those who argued for an acquittal. The jury could not reach a decision. Menendez was charged with 12 criminal counts. Most of them were bribery. This was an 18-count indictment. The other 6 counts involved his co-defendant here, an eye doctor from South Florida. The prosecution contended this was a case of bribery. The defense said there was no bribery here. The senator did certain things, perhaps on behalf or at the suggestion of this eye doctor. The eye doctor made significant campaign contributions and provided free travel to the senator, but this was not a quid pro quo, according to the defense. This was simply a case of friendship. The prosecution said this was bribery. bribery. They had a difficult time proving this quid pro quo, and instead took the position that it was a stream of benefits that resulted in this bribery taking place. Another obstacle that the prosecution faced was the recent Supreme Court decision involving the reversal of the conviction of Bob McDonnell of Virginia. The Supreme Court narrowed the description legally of what constitutes bribery, and the judge charged the jury with that in mind. Apparently, in this case, for some, the bar was simply too high, and today a mistrial was declared. Senator Menendez now facing re-election and possibly a retrial, but that much we do not know at this hour. Back to you.
Yeah, David Lee, thank you for all those details, because you have brought into focus a couple of different things. One has to do with how do you have an 18-count indictment with all of these charges, and I'm looking at it now. You said, again, most of them conspiracy, bribery, but they had a lot of evidence in this. But as you say, the bar is different now because of a recent case with McDonald that says that you've got to prove things in a different way and in a bigger way, for lack of a better term. So you've brought that into focus, and that certainly played a role in this trial, because if you didn't meet that higher bar, he was going to at least be in a position where the government might get another bite at the apple. It's not an acquittal, but he can walk away today. So that's one. The other, David Lee, I want to talk to you about is the politics of this, not get in too deep. But Democrats were looking in the Senate that if Bob Menendez didn't come back, if he were convicted, if whatever would happen with him, if he were not able to come back and cast his vote in the Senate, that 48 seats that they have was going to have a deficit in it.
That's right. The balance of power was an issue here in this trial. If the senator had been convicted, the governor of New Jersey, who is a Republican as of now, Chris Christie, he will leave office in early January, would have the responsibility of appointing a new senator if, and this is a mighty big if Senator Menendez were to have resigned or if he was expelled from the Senate. An expulsion is highly unlikely. That requires a 2/3 vote. At least 15 Democrats would have had to sign on. So it was highly unlikely that even if Senator Menendez were to have been convicted, the balance of power would have changed in the Senate. What could have happened is he may have remained in office, and this is all hypothetical. He could have remained in office until the newly elected governor of New Jersey, who's a Democrat, then resigned, and then the new governor would have appointed his successor, presumably another Democrat, to fill that seat. But this is all moot now. There is a mistrial in the 11-week trial of Senator Bob Menendez. And what's extraordinary here, too, Harris, is the amount of money and resources that the government has spent. Don't forget that the former Secretary of Health and Human Services testified. 3 U.S. senators testified here, a former senator, as well as numerous other high-ranking officials. And the result, a mistrial. The jury could not agree.
David Lee, I'm going to ask you to stand by for just a moment, and you leave us off on such a great point, because what you're talking about are Americans' tax dollars. Whether you live in the state of New Jersey or not, you're watching the story because of the amount of resources that they put forth. You heard senators being brought forth, and it is interesting because this is a day in which we are talking about tax dollars like we haven't in many, many years as they vote on a tax reform bill. But we are covering what's happening in New Jersey for a couple of reasons. One, yes, the big bill. 2, Bob Menendez, a Democrat in the Senate, a mistrial for him. We are going to pause for just a moment to let our Fox stations join us as this is making news across the country. This is Fox News coverage of Senator Robert Menendez's corruption trial, where the judge has just declared a mistrial. I'm Harris Faulkner at Fox News headquarters in New York. The reason why we are bringing you this story is because this is monumental in the balance of power in Congress. It's also a day in which we're talking a lot about taxes. This was a very expensive trial, and now the judge has said that those bribery and fraud and conspiracy charges, an 18-count indictment brought against a sitting member of the Senate, Bob Menendez, that there has been a mistrial in this case. The judge just moments ago spent about 20 minutes each talking to the jurors to make sure. You guys were deadlocked. Are you sure we cannot go forward? Is there a way to do an up or down on this, innocent or guilty? This is not an acquittal. A mistrial means they couldn't get it together. They couldn't reach a verdict in all of this. And we have been on verdict watch, just so you know, for 8 days in all of this. This is a 38-day-long trial of a sitting member of Congress and of the Senate particularly. David Lee Miller is outside the courthouse in Newark, New Jersey, to tell us the latest. David?
Harris, it was about 11:30 this morning that the jury passed a note to the court saying that they could not agree unanimously on any of the 18 counts. A short time later, the judge interviewed the foreman of the jury. He interviewed the other 11 members of the jury to confirm the contents of that note, and then the judge declared a mistrial in this 11-week-long trial. Upon hearing the fact that there was going to be a mistrial, the senator, who has usually sat stoically in the courtroom, embraced his son and his daughter with a big smile, obviously breathing a sigh of relief. But as you just mentioned, this is not an acquittal. This is a hung jury. The jury was deadlocked here. We do not know the split. We do not know the precise issues that they were grappling with, but the jury was abundantly clear in that note that they could not reach agreement on any of the 18 charges. The senator was charged with 12 charges, many of them bribery. The other 6 charges dealt with his co-defendant in this bribery case, a Florida eye surgeon. The two men had a long friendship. The defense maintained nothing illegal took place here. This was simply a case of one friend helping out another, the senator helping his friend, the friend providing campaign contributions and free travel, luxurious travel at that. But the prosecution said it went much beyond that this was a case of bribery. They may have been friends, but what also took place here, Harris, was illegal. That, according to the indictment, apparently the jury could not agree unanimously, and now the United States government is going to have to decide if this is a case worth trying once again. And I should also point out that a few feet behind from where I'm standing, a podium is now being set up, and we expect to hear from Senator Menendez, possibly others, the prosecutors as well, who have not talked during this entire trial as things wind down here at Newark Federal Court. Harris.
And of course, just to tell our viewers who are joining us on Fox broadcast stations across the nation, I was just reminding everybody that it's our tax dollars here too, because of the scope, the breadth, and the length of this trial, David Lee. And so should the government decide to go forward and try another case against Senator Bob Menendez, we're talking about an expensive process, a lengthy process. We had a juror leave the pool just a few days ago who had a long planned vacation, who laid out the fact that he or she thought that Menendez was innocent. So you have to take into account some of those things as they're happening in just the last few hours, and whether or not the government would seek charges against him again. I want to give you a last word as we wrap this up. A sitting member of the Senate found in a mistrial today. That is not an acquittal, but a hung jury couldn't decide whether or not he should be punished or simply acquitted of the charges against him with fraud, conspiracy, and bribery at the heart of them, the way that David Lee Miller had laid them out. David Lee, thank you very much. All right. Please stay tuned to Fox News Channel and this Fox broadcast station for continuing coverage of the story. You heard David Lee just say that they were setting up a lectern behind him. We may hear from Senator Bob Menendez. Remember, the balance of power could change if he were not to return to the Senate, if he had been found convicted of any of these charges. That did not happen today. If the government tries him again, we don't know what could happen. A lot of eyes on this. We'll follow it for you. I'm Harris Faulkner in New York. This Fox News alert, they are voting on taxes on the Hill today, and ahead of the full House taking a vote. The leader, the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, on the floor. Let's watch.
It should be. This is not how it is in this country traditionally. We need to restore growth. We need to restore opportunity. We need to restore this beautiful thing we affectionately call the American idea. Passing this bill is the single biggest thing we can do to to grow the economy, to restore opportunity, and help these middle-income families who are struggling. People always ask, well, what's in it for me? You know, how do I benefit from this? Well, I'm a chart guy. Why is this important? What this shows you, under this plan, the average family at every income level gets a tax cut. A tax cut at every average level. And what this chart shows you, the people here who are struggling, the people here who are in middle income brackets, the people here who are low income trying to become middle income, they get the biggest tax cut. This plan is good for people of all walks of life, all across the country, and the bigger relief goes to those who need it most. Let's put it into numbers. A typical household of 4 people, they make $59,000 in this country. That family of 4, $1,182 tax cut first year alone. The median family income, mom, dad, 2 kids, the median family income in America today is $87,000. That family will get a $1,941 tax cut right away, year 1. So if you're one of those 57% of Americans who say you don't even have $500 to go to an emergency, this really helps you. Let's talk about those people who itemize their taxes, who live in high tax states. Let's talk about maybe a couple making $115,000, living in a high tax state. Let's say they've got $8,400 in a mortgage interest payment and $6,900 in property taxes for the year. They can still write all of those off under this plan, and they will still see a tax cut of $1,130. If they got kids, an even larger tax cut. Not only do people get to keep more of their own money in their own pocket, but we dramatically simplify the tax system. We make it more fair. Today, 7 out of 10 Americans don't itemize their deductions. That means 70% of Americans take what we call the standard deduction for their taxes. And it's just that, it's standard, it's straightforward. You're not taxed on that income. But over the years, Washington has piled on special interest loophole after special interest loophole after special interest loophole. And these loopholes are skewed to the people who are wealthy, who are well-connected, who can afford all the tax lawyers and all the accountants to navigate the tax code so they can get a good deal. But if you're not in that group, if you don't have the lawyers and the accountants, and you're just scraping away in your middle income, you don't get those deals. So what we want to do is take those loopholes away, make it fair for everybody, lower tax rates, and make it easy. Here's how easy this gets. We're going to make it so easy that by doubling the standard deduction, 90% of Americans, 9 out of 10 Americans will be able to fill out their taxes on a form the size of a postcard. And what this means is, for a single person, you don't pay taxes on your first $12,000 of income. For a married couple, you don't pay taxes on your first $24,000 of income. And here's the basic philosophy. Instead of jumping through all the hoops that the IRS puts in front of you, instead of doing what the special interest groups say you need to do in order to get some of your money back, we basically say, keep your money in the first place. It's your money. Do what you want with it. All of this is about tax relief. It's about fairness. It's about simplicity. It's about easing the stress and anxiety that's in this country. But what we really need to do is we need better jobs, more jobs, faster economic growth, higher wages. And this brings us to the way we tax ourselves as businesses. This brings us to, what do we do to make America the most competitive place in the world? Here is the real problem we've got when it comes to the way we tax our businesses. We're the worst in the world at it. We right now tax our businesses at the highest corporate tax rate in the industrialized world. What does that do? Well, let me give you an example where I come from. In Wisconsin, the example is Johnson Controls. Johnson Controls is a company with a history dating back in our state to the 1880s. It was the biggest company we had headquartered in Wisconsin. Not anymore, because Johnson Controls is an Irish company, and their Irish tax rate is 12.5%. This is happening all over the country. Companies, just to stay competitive, are becoming foreign companies. And when the headquarters of that company leaves your hometown, when the headquarters of that business and that employer leaves your state and goes to another country, there goes the United Way campaign. There goes the white-collar jobs. There goes the manufacturing. There goes the research and development. There goes America's competitiveness. What's worse is all these foreign companies are buying U.S. companies because it's cheaper because of taxes. So here's what we do. Instead of being the worst in the pack, we leapfrog ourselves by bringing that tax rate down to 20%. Because guess what? When you tax your businesses at much, much higher tax rates than our foreign competitors tax theirs, they win and we lose. We got to stop losing. We got to start winning. That's what this does. What's even more impressive about this is it lowers taxes for those small businesses, those mom and pops, even more. So we got to make sure that our businesses, the job creators of America, have every incentive to stay here, have every incentive to build here, have every incentive to hire here. And what's more, we're finding that by doing this, we're going to get faster economic growth. We're going to get more jobs. We're going to get higher wages, better take-home pay. Let me just break it down in simple numbers. Tax Foundation, they ran the numbers. Nonpartisan Tax Foundation said, with this bill, we'll get faster growth, about 3.5% faster economic growth, about 890,000 new jobs. They estimate that in New York State alone, 57,834 new jobs. Wisconsin, 17,999 new jobs. California, 422,000 new jobs. Texas, 74,037 new jobs. And you get these new jobs when you grow this economy. You pass this bill, you grow this economy. And so why do we do all of this? Because it's about giving people more take-home pay. It's about raising wages. It's about helping families who are struggling to get ahead. It's about getting Washington out of the business of picking winners and losers and giving the American people the kind of economy they deserve, the kind of economy we can have. This just shows you that across every income scale, across the board, wages will go up because we're going to grow the economy. And most of the wage growth goes to the people who need it most, people who are in the middle, people who are struggling. That is why we're here. My colleagues, right now, we are in the middle of a long day where people are working tooth and nail in their jobs. We are right here in the middle of a day where America's workers are trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet, how they're trying to keep up with everything. Those people, the hardworking taxpayers of this country that we represent, that is why we're here. This is why we're doing this. They are the foundation of this country. We're here today for them. The special interests are trying to protect their piece of the pie. All the negativity you see out there, there's probably a special interest group back there trying to keep their special niche in the tax code. It is fine time, it is high time we root that out, we don't settle for the status quo, and we give people the kind of tax code that they need and they deserve. It has been 31 years since we last did this. And it is finally time that we get the general interests of this country to prevail over the special interests in Washington. So we know that this brings more fairness. We know that this increases take-home pay and bigger paychecks. And we know that this grows the economy and creates more opportunities. Faster economic growth is not going to fix every problem America has. But faster economic growth is going to help us solve every problem America has. My colleagues, I ask you today to raise your gaze and do something bold, to see the forest through the trees, to think about the people we are here to actually represent, to think about the people who are struggling, who are going to go to bed tonight and probably not sleep because they're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. That's what this is. This is one of the most historic and the biggest things that we will ever do. And the reason is because this is one of the biggest things we can do to improve people's lives, to revitalize that beautiful American idea, to spread liberty and freedom. This is something that's going to refresh our confidence in ourselves and our confidence in each other. Enough settling, enough giving in. Let's start to reclaim our future right here, in this moment, in this chamber, in this moment. Let's pass this bill. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Texas. Does the gentleman from Texas yield back his time?
I do yield back.
The gentleman from Texas yield back his time.
All right, so you see the Speaker of the House on the floor there, Paul Ryan, and you see others yielding back their time. So the notes that we had on whether or not the Speaker would step up there and be the last person to speak might actually hold before they hold a full House vote. If not, we will continue to watch the situation because it may or may not happen that way. We may hear from more, and it looks like that may happen. But in the meantime, we were told now that the President of the United States has left Capitol Hill after meeting with Republican lawmakers and rallying that the full House vote could be moments away. As that happens, we will bring it to you live. The other story that is breaking news today has to do with a sitting member of the Senate, Al Franken, and sexual harassment and other misconduct charges being made by his accuser, Leanne Tweeden. Let's watch this now against Al Franken of the Senate.
Everybody else, and you know, like I said, the to know it in the context of the entire trip and what happened in the entire 2 weeks is telling to me, and just the fact that he just thought he could get away with it, and that it was okay, and that it was funny, and you know, I knew all these years later that, oh, well, I thought it was going to be funny. You know, I thought, you know, oh, the comedian, I thought it was going to be I thought it was a joke, I was in bad taste, or I thought it was going to be funny, and I guess it wasn't, or, you know, it was poor taste, or whatever. I mean, nothing like that is ever funny. I mean, is it funny if he does that to your sister or your daughter or your wife? I mean, that's just all of those things. But like I said, in context of already assaulting me backstage and all the little petty things he was doing to belittle me and how he treated me and sort of, you know, in succession, and then it ended with that, and then how I was left to feel like without being able to say whatever I needed to say to his face, that's how I, you know, I'm like, oh, great, while I was sleeping you do that to me, and then I can't even say anything to him. So that's just sort of how it all happened and how it finished.
So when he says in a statement, and he's issued two statements that says, one, I apologize. Mm-hmm. Two, I respect women. Three, I don't remember the statement.
Wait, hold on. So I've only seen the first one. Can you read the second and third ones to me?
Well, he says, I respect women. I don't respect men who don't. The fact that my own actions have given people a good reason to doubt that makes me feel ashamed. He's also asked for, as has Mitch McConnell, an investigation. So, one, do you accept his apology? And two, what do you think should happen after an investigation?
I mean, yeah, there's no reason why I shouldn't accept his apology. You know, I mean, if that's sure. I wasn't. I didn't come out to. I wasn't looking for anything. You know what I mean? And people are like, well, what were you expecting from him? What did you expect from him? If he wanted to apologize, great. I mean, look, this has happened. This has been going on this happened 11 years ago. I saw him a couple years after that with my husband at a USO gala, and he walked up to me and found me in a room and said hello to me, and I was very cold to him, and I turned around. He found me and you know, with my back to him and said hello, and I was like, hi, Al. And I turned around and walked away from him. My husband even said to me last night, he's like, as I recall, Leanne, you left me standing there with Al because you said hello and then turned your back on him and walked away and left me standing there with him. And I'm like, yeah, because I wasn't going to talk to him. You know, so my husband said hello, Al. But no, he had a chance to apologize to me then because he knew exactly what he did to me then, and that picture was out there. So he had a chance to apologize to me. So I wasn't holding my breath. I'd have been long dead by then, you know. So the apology, sure, I accept it. Yes, I mean, people make mistakes, and of course he knew he made a mistake. So yes, I do accept that apology. The ethics investigation, if that's what Mitch McConnell wants to do, that's on them. I'm not calling for that. If that's what he wants to do, okay, that's up to them. I'm not demanding that. I'm not demanding any of that. I just don't want this. To me, it's more about. You know, this is happening in Hollywood. I think we live in a bubble. I live in a bubble. I've worked in the entertainment business, sports, radio, television, commercials, movies for over 20 years. And I think because all of this is happening here, I mean, this has, you know, I mean, with Al now in the Senate, so this is kind of Hollywood and kind of politics, but it's sort of the same sort of stage, you know, it's just sort of parallel. But this is happening in Middle America. This is happening, you know, for women that work at Chili's. This is happening for women who work in an office building somewhere in Iowa and Kansas and Florida. I mean, this is happening to women who have you know, no power and no say to speak up. You know what I mean? And this is, I think the tide is turning. And you know, what about all the women who don't have microphones and have a voice and can say something, and then it's everywhere on the news? You know, what about the women who get assaulted every day and are afraid to speak out? I mean, look, I was afraid to speak out 11 years ago. I wanted to say something, and there were people around me who said, oh my God, you will get annihilated and you will never work in this town again. And I was afraid of that. I really was afraid of that. You know, I was working at the Best Damn Sports Show. I was working at Fox Sports. I mean, I had a good career, and I thought, you know what, if I come out and speak out then, I probably would get fired or would just get phased out. And I was afraid of that. You know, and I'm not afraid of that anymore. I mean, could it still happen? Sure, possibly, but you know, I'm a lot more secure and you know, myself, my career at this age now, and I really do think the tide has turned. And really, I'm doing it now because it's different. There's strength in numbers. Congresswoman Jackie Spear has come out, and she's talking about it now. And when she said she had that experience when she was in her 20s as a congressional aide and came out and said her chief of staff stopped her in an office and grabbed her face and kissed her and stuck his tongue in her mouth. And we had her on our air, and she said that to us while we were interviewing her on McIntyre in the Morning, the show that I'm the news anchor on. And I looked at Doug and I went, I kind of mouthed, I'm like, that was Al Franken to me. And I said, I think that was my catalyst to sort of go, you know, if I'm going to tell my story, now is the time. 2017 is not 2006. You know, it's just a different time. And maybe I can be somebody's Jackie Spear, and they can tell their story in real time and not wait. And not wait. I mean, why do you think so many people are coming out now that have stories that are decades old?
Do you think he should step down?
You know, people make mistakes. I mean, I'm not calling for him to step down. You know, that's not my place to say that. You know, I mean, if there are other people that come out and say he's done this, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I'm the only one that's come out and said Senator Franken's done something to me, but if there are other women that have come out, I haven't returned a phone call. I've gotten a phone call from a woman that I've only gotten a message and that said that something similar has happened to her, and I haven't returned it yet. So that's to be determined. But you know, I don't know. That's not my call. I don't know. But I don't. You know, I'm not saying that.
You know, Leanne's been here since 3:30 this morning. If we still need a fast one-on-one, we can do it standing up there if we can kind of move it along. But I think this was probably maybe more than anyone thought. It's unbelievable what you've done.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So if we need to do that, let's do it and get going. And
Bring me the mic here.
Yes, we're good to go. Thank you.
Much pleasure. Thank you for talking.
Bring that whole thing.
Thank you again for the time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to turn around.
All right.
All right, so we were watching them do some technical things on the dais there with the accuser of Senator Al Franken, Democrat from Minnesota. That is Leanne Whedon. She detailed the things that she says that Al Franken did, non-consensual physical advances back in the early 2000s before he was a senator. But now, in just a short little while, Senators Claire McCaskill and Amy Klobuchar, McCaskill of Missouri, Klobuchar of Minnesota, are calling for an ethics investigation of Al Franken, Senator Al Franken. He has said in a recent statement that he would be open to that. And so that is the part of the story that we are covering as we watch that accuser, Leanne Whedon, lay out the details of what happened on a USO tour that happened years ago in 2006. Whedon, excuse me, she was detailing that information there and taking questions there with reporters. So now I have alongside me the power panel today. We're going to talk a little bit about this, but before we go there, can we make that bug on the right side of the screen really big? Because right now the U.S. House is voting on landmark tax legislation. And just before, I know, look at, yeah, I can make a small picture bigger. This was where we were just seconds ago before Leanne Whedon was making her accusations against a sitting member of the Senate, Al Franken, Democrat from Minnesota. We were on the floor of the House with House Speaker Paul Ryan leading the Republicans on their way to push forth through a vote happening right now. And you can read the vote counts on your screen. We're told in about 10 minutes we should know how this thing has shaken out. But if this goes forward, and Republicans were jubilant about the fact that they thought that it would, this is one key. Then the Senate. Then they reconcile their differences, and then potentially the president gets it on his desk, and he has promised to sign what is before him, with just a couple of exceptions, one of them being a corporate tax that has to drop to 20%. From a well into the 30s as it is now. Our power panel, Democratic strategist and former Bill Clinton pollster, Bernard Whitman is here. Rich Lowry, editor of the National Review and a Fox News contributor too. Let's start with taxes, because in the next little while we are going to see something that makes history.
Yeah, this has to be a really gratifying moment for Paul Ryan, because the Republican House majority for years has been completely dysfunctional and borderline ungovernable. And this has happened incredibly quickly, incredibly smoothly. So like with Obamacare repeal, it'll be another item where the House has done its job, and then the question's the Senate.
You know, what's interesting, too, Bernard, is that you saw the president today go. It wasn't to whip the vote count, potentially. He can't do that. But what he can do is motivate everybody to move forward.
Yes, and I mean, and Rich sets out exactly what the problem is. The problem is going to be in the Senate. Ron Johnson's already said he's not going to vote for it, which leaves a margin
for it the way it is now.
And there's a good reason for that, because the American people aren't buying the fact that they're going to get a tax cut. If you actually look at the most recent poll, it's a YouGov poll, 12% of the American people thought they'd get a tax cut. 51% of the American people thought Donald Trump would get a tax cut. And the reason is that in a few short years under the GOP plan in the Senate, taxes start rising on those making $10,000 to $30,000. A few years after that, taxes start rising on those making $30,000 to $75,000. But taxes, for some reason, on those making over $100,000 continue. Corporate tax rates are permanent. These tax rates for the middle class are ephemeral. That is not right. And the American people understand that they're likely not going to see the benefit that Paul Ryan is suggesting.
There's a really important policy reason for why it's structured that way, or why they want to make the corporate rates permanent and aren't so worried about the individual side, is because corporations make business decisions on really long time frames. So if you have these tax cuts even theoretically expiring in 10 years on the corporate side, that's a problem in terms of boosting corporate investment. And the bet Republicans are making is on the individual side, no one is going to actually repeal these tax cuts when push comes to shove.
All right, a couple of elements having not anything to do with corporations but individuals. Those 7 tax brackets, people were looking forward to those being squeezed back down to 4 potentially, as we saw. And in one of the bills, it wouldn't be that way, which means you can't do it on an app and you can't do it on a postcard. That's a broken promise right there, or do you think they can reconcile that?
You know, President Trump's been very forthright about this. It's a tax cut. It's not tax reform. They're making reforms around the margins, but it's mostly a tax cut. And the changes we're seeing in the Senate are also ensuring that more middle-class families will get tax
They're
cuts.
voting right now, and how they vote makes a difference in everyone's lives in America. We're watching it. Stay close. We're right back.
Justice is supposed to be doing. And they were not supposed to be leaking to the press during the early stages of their investigation, which violated my rights to a fair process. I've made my share of mistakes, but my mistakes were never a crime. I've learned through this process a lot about our system of justice. It is truly a system of justice you can afford. I understand why so many Americans feel that justice is elusive. But for supporters from across the country who believed in me, who knew who I am and what I stand for, I could never have afforded the millions of dollars this case has cost. So my gratitude to all those New Jerseyans and Americans from across the country who believed in me and helped me mount my legal defense against the millions of dollars spent by the overwhelming weight of the federal government. I've also learned about the incredible weight and power of the federal government and how it can crush you if it wants to. It gives me an even greater resolve to make sure that there is a check to that awesome power. Because where do I go to? What office or department of the federal government gives me back the past 2.5 years of my life? Where do I go to have the damage they sought to incur to my reputation? Where is it? What department is it that replaces it? So let me share some final thoughts. To those who left me, who abandoned me in my darkest moment, I forgive you. To those who embraced me in my darkest moment, I love you. To those New Jerseyans who gave me the benefit of the doubt, I thank you. To those who have a doubt, I'm going to work harder than ever before so that there is no doubt. To those in the press who did their job and did it with professionalism, and even to some of you who are actually kind. Where's Dominic? I don't see him. Dominic? I believe you showed others what a professional press is all about and why that freedom is so important to our society. To those who were digging my political grave so that they could jump into my seat, I know who you are, and I won't forget you. Finally, let me answer the question that I could not answer before the trial was over. Why didn't I testify? There is nothing more that I wanted to do but to tell my story. I am proud of the thousands of people I've helped in New Jersey and across the country who I have helped with their visas, reuniting families, and very often bringing people who were denied so that they could save the life of a loved one. I'm proud of my work to have 100% port scanning, something I have been a champion of and believe is in the vital national security interests of the United States, to secure it and to stop the flow of drugs. My fight to save Medicare hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe we can't afford to throw out good medicine when we can carefully administer it to patients. But a trial is not a debate. It's not a public forum. It's a legal proceeding. My testimony on direct and cross-examination would have likely taken days. That means we would have put at risk losing one of the jurors who was told she would be excused to go on a pre-planned vacation. And we collectively felt, by the way she reacted to different parts of the prosecution and defense's presentations, that she believed in our innocence. And we didn't want to lose her. And boy, were we right on that. We still lost her. Secondly, the prosecution would have used me to redo their entire meritless case in chief all over again, including having me read emails and other materials that were not mine, but would have put my voice and my name for their purpose, in essence giving them an additional summation before their final summation. So that was just a small window into my thinking. Anyone who knows me knows that I never seek a fight, but they also know that I never shy away from one. This wasn't a fair fight. I've spent 43 years, my entire adult life, in public service to the people of New Jersey and the nation. It has been one of my greatest privileges. I have served with honesty and integrity and given it my all every day. I am proud of what I have been able to accomplish for the people of New Jersey. I'm proud that many young people and many from the Hispanic community look at me and say it's possible to grow up poor, live in a tenement, go to public schools, be the first in your family to go to college, and rise to be one of 100 United States senators.
All right, a very lengthy and tearful moments from Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. He was found in a mistrial today. That is not an acquittal, of course, but he was laying out some reasons why he doubts that the government will go after him again on charges that included conspiracy, bribery. It was an 18-count indictment again. Deadlocked the jury was, and they could not come to a decision. A hung trial. The judge decided that earlier today after spending some time with those jurors. So Senator Bob Menendez now being able to go back to his life unless the government comes after him again. That's what was making news on one side of your screen. But right now, the House has just passed tax reform. Their bill. And, of course, the Senate is working on theirs, but this was a huge first step. You saw the President of the United States on the Hill this afternoon. House Speaker then spoke before a full House vote, and we are anticipating a hearing from the House Speaker, who you see standing behind the lectern right there, again this afternoon. The vote fell 227 to 205. The tax reform that Republicans had been talking about they needed politically, but most importantly, to give Americans back a portion of their paychecks. That was the goal. You saw talk of a corporate tax on both sides, both chambers of Congress. The House bill calling for a 20% for corporations to pay. That's down 15 points from what they currently pay. Earlier, you heard the House Speaker talking about companies that were not locating themselves inside the United States right now because of the way that they are taxed, and how that was such a huge portion of what they wanted to get done in the House today. Their bill would bring back jobs, and the impetus for those companies to repatriate that money, to bring it back to the United States and do business here and change things, reform things for the economy in such a way that we've seen the Dow Jones, and I don't know if we can pop that up split screen too, but it's been doing an answer back for quite a while, a dance in rarefied air, breaking records, and now the House has passed really historic for the open era tax reform on their portion of it, though. But they still have a lot to work out. I want to bring in my power panel now, Rich Lowry and Bernard Whitman. Rich, as we watch this, we're watching for the first time history being made. I put it that way because this is the detail of talk that we're having on taxes, not since 1986 when Ronald Reagan was president.
Yeah, so, and they had votes to spare in the House. Now you go in the Senate where you can only lose 3. And that's what undid Obamacare repeal, and it's going to be close in the Senate. But ultimately, I think just being one of 3 to stand up and stop an initiative that everyone believes the fortunes of the party in the midterm elections so depend on this is going to be really difficult. So someone like Ron Johnson has problems with the current form. Will he stand up and be one of the 3 to block this and really harm the party? I doubt it.
So what I hear you saying is because that's what happened previously with Obamacare, but the stakes were not what they are right now. They're
right,
very,
because
very different.
this is happening against the backdrop of that failure, so it makes it even more important to get this done.
All right, the balance of power then was also something that Democrats were concerned about with Bob Menendez. And you see, I mean, he can go back to work unless the government wants to come back to him. It doesn't necessarily touch this situation unless you get some Republicans who vote no in the Senate.
And I think it's not about standing up for the American people. It's about standing up for their party. The Republicans are desperate to score a win. And unfortunately, the House Speaker, I congratulate him for hoodwinking the American people, selling this as a tax cut, when in fact it is a corporate tax giveaway and a massive tax and financial redistribution to the wealthy. If you actually look at the details here, 2/3 of those who need a tax cut the most, who make under $30,000, are getting either no tax cut or actually a tax increase. The idea that this is a middle-class tax cut is a farce that has been played on the American people, and they're not buying it.
I'm going to step in there because we're going to run out of real estate. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here. Notwithstanding all of what you think, Bernard, the fact of the matter is that the House just passed this. They didn't need Democrats to do anything, 227 to 205. And we are watching the situation where you see the chairman of the House Ways and Means to the left shoulder, I believe it is. That's Kevin Brady. And on the right shoulder, stepping up next, we are told, is House Speaker Paul Ryan. And, of course, we know from having them on this program, Kevin Brady yesterday, that they knew they had the votes. They whipped these votes a couple nights ago. Now let's hear from Representative Brady. And we're also going to go straight into the daily briefing. I'll see you tomorrow.
Exciting day for the American people. And